Alleged serial killer Billy Chemirmir, whose trial for murder will begin on Monday.
Second trial on this same crime.
Accused serial killer Billy Chemirmir today spoke to a lead detective for hours, all recorded, denying he ever murdered or robbed anyone.
A trusted person in the open, but a horrible individual when alone with the most vulnerable people in society. This is a story of how a bad person gets a dose of their own medicine.
Accused serial killer Billy Chemirmir with one of the 18 elderly women he's charged with killings. Police say the 48-year-old Chemirmir killed at least 18 elderly people.
This is convicted murderer and accused serial killer Billy Chemirmir. He has identified his next victim and is putting everything in place for the horrendous crime he is about to commit. But it doesn't take long before he gets nabbed. You're about to see how this cold killer gets taken down by a 91-year-old grandma. In this surveillance footage obtained by investigators, you can see 48-year-old Chemirmir as he searches for his next victim. The elderly woman being stalked here is 81-year-old Lucy Harris. Harris can be seen walking into a local mall to get some personal supplies. Unknown to her, she's being followed by Billy Chemirmir, who will later appear at her house uninvited. But this is not the first time for Billy Chemirmir. He has a record of stalking and killing members of the senior community around the Plano area of Dallas, Texas, in the United States, and his pattern of killing will later earn him the title, the Pillowcase Murderer. But first, let's take a look at the man himself. Where is he from and what does he do? What are the experiences that shaped his life, pushing him to turn out the way he did? The Pillowcase Murderer.
These are their faces. 18 elderly women in North Texas killed, with one suspect at the center of it all.
Chemirmir started life in Kenya. He was born to the village chief as Billy Kipkorir Chemirmir at the Eldama Ravine, Baringo County in Kenya on December 8, 1972. He eventually bagged a United States green card and was living permanently in the US. In 2010 and 2011, Chemirmir was convicted of driving under the influence and received fines and short sentences. He was also arrested for assaulting a female companion in 2012 and for trespassing at Edgemere Retirement Community in June 2016. Chemirmir continued committing crimes until he graduated to a more heinous one of murdering elderly women in retirement homes. So who is Mary Bartell, the fearsome grandma who stopped Chemirmir's killing spree? Her confrontation of the killer and the subsequent description she gave officers helped to bring the killer to a stop. But just how did she do it, and in what way did the incident help law enforcement officers? Grandma Mary Bartell. Mary Annis Bartell has called the Preston Place retirement community home for years. Retirement communities are residential areas or housing complexes built for senior citizens who do not require much help with their daily activities. However, it is not uncommon for these communities to provide home care services. This was the opportunity Billy Chemirmir exploited, sometimes serving as a care provider and other times posing as a maintenance guy. Retirement communities like Preston Place afford old adults opportunities to socialize with others and partake in recreational activities, like sports, arts, table games, dancing, and spiritual events. The aim is to provide a safe and calm place that feels like home for people who have dedicated many years to serving their fellow humans. Preston Place is particularly renowned for being safe and secure. Members of the 16-acre gated community are generally nice and peaceful to one another, and there have been no issues since its establishment. The community has even won multiple awards in recognition of its excellent services.
It's a very busy community.
We have a lot of different activities.
Interacting with people, a variety of activities.
Everybody has got such a friendly attitude.
They have never had any issues with security.
Mary Bartell lived in this luxury retirement home for many years with her husband Donald Bartell before he died in 2015. The couple were happily married for 67 years, and it's inevitable for Mrs. Bartell to miss her late husband. However, Mary remained in the community that was home to her and her husband, participating in the various activities and finding comfort with the friends she's made over the years and her close family, including children and grandchildren. Those who were close to Mary said she would always go for daily exercise classes and visit the religious center for Mass, alongside chatting and interacting with friends. On March 19, 2018, different events unraveled disturbingly. Around 30 minutes past 9 in the morning, a 911 call was put through to Plano Dispatch. The caller from Preston Place Retirement Home was an elderly woman reporting an issue with her friend. Mary's friend Jackie had visited Mary's house to pick her up. They were to attend their normal daily exercise class together, but she immediately noticed that everything was not right when she got to Mary's apartment. Mary would normally stand in front of the apartment waiting for her friend, but on this day, she was not there. On another look, Jackie found out that the door to her apartment was open. She went in and saw a motionless Mary on the floor. She tried everything she could to wake Mary up, but she did not respond. Worried, she quickly placed a call to emergency services. When emergency services arrived, they checked Mary's pulse as they tried to revive her. Mary's family was informed, and they were immediately thrown into a state of worry, unsure of what had happened to their beloved Mary, and if medical professionals would be able to revive her. They noted that Mary did not have any disturbance with her health and lived an active physical and social life despite being 91 years old. As friends and family continued to worry about her state, they received good news that Mary had regained consciousness, but no one was expecting her to do the very first thing she did after becoming conscious again. Mary showed the EMT and police officers her finger, and everyone noticed she didn't have her wedding ring on. At first, it looked like a trivial detail that didn't hold any meaning, but her son John explained that was not the case. According to John Bartell, Mary, her mother, never went anywhere without her wedding ring. She would sleep and bathe with the ring on. Therefore, the fact that the ring was missing from her finger was a sign, and it was not a good one. So they set to searching through the entire apartment for the wedding ring. After searching for a while without success, something else came to their notice. The wedding ring was not the only missing object. Every other piece of jewelry belonging to Mary Bartell was nowhere to be found. This immediately rang a bell for the police officer present, Sergeant Brian France. He had seen a situation like this before. According to Sergeant France, another detective, Officer Jennifer Chapman had put out a bulletin detailing deceased people with their belongings missing. They were elderly women, and their deaths were usually passed on as natural, but many of them were suspicious since some of their belongings could not be found. That was when they realized that these deaths may be murders, and that they may have been perpetrated by the same person. Suddenly, a case of theft becomes a search for a cold serial killer. Officer Jamal Kemp of the Plano Police Department, during his testimony, also noted that Mary had red marks on her face around the nose area when he was taking the initial report, further adding to the suspicion that something sinister had happened in Mary's apartment. They transported Mary to the hospital, but they knew they had a serious case on their hands. Detectives started revisiting many of their past cases, looking for any resemblance that could help them make more sense of what is going on and possibly find the perpetrator. Some of the cases that stood out were that of friends Helen Lee and Mary Bixler. This is the story of the two brave women that stood together till the end and whose case helped to shed more light on happenings in their retirement home. Helen Lee and Mary Bixler. 9 miles away from the Preston Place retirement community was another luxurious and award-winning retirement home. Parkview in Frisco, located on Stonebrook Parkway in Frisco, Texas, provides different forms of retirement community services to seniors, including independent and assisted living. This was where 82-year-old Helen Lee lived for 5 years since she retired from her former job. Helen, who was a seamstress for more than 45 years, got frequent visits from her granddaughter, Lindsay Watkins, but when family was not around, she could be found with her close friend, Mary Bixler. 90-year-old Marilyn was not just a friend to Helen. They lived in the same building in the Parkview retirement home. Their apartments were only a floor apart, and this allowed the two of them to spend a lot of time together. In the month of September 2017, the most shocking scenes were discovered as both women were found dead in their apartments. The third day of September was a Sunday, and Lindsay, Helen's granddaughter, went to church expecting her grandma to join later, but she did not show up. This was unlike Helen, so Lindsay decided to go check up on her at the retirement home. On getting to the apartment, she saw Helen lying on her bed with her cane by her side. She immediately contacted the law enforcement department, who confirmed that Helen had died. Confused as to what could have led to her death, Lindsay and the rest of the family inquired from the police. Just like Mary Bartell, they noted that Helen did not mention any issue to them and never showed any sign to suggest all was not well. Despite being 82 years old, she was active and interacted well with family and friends. Police informed the family that Helen had died of a heart attack and there was nothing suspicious to suggest otherwise. The women were in their early to late 80s, living in retirement homes. They opted to respect them and not perform an autopsy, especially when nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, the signs were there. The families of both women found it suspicious that both women were lying down straight on their beds, like they had been carefully placed there by someone else. They also noted that the women had bruises on their arms and found a damaged pair of glasses. The women were also missing wedding rings and other valuable jewelry. The investigation into the retirement home killings was a long and challenging one for officers. This is the timeline of events and the findings that propelled the case towards success. Initial investigations and findings. Further investigations revealed the same pattern, with multiple elderly women in various senior retirement communities around Dallas, Texas. Missing rings, gold necklaces, wristwatches, and other valuables worth over $500,000. Investigators also noticed the missing items usually get lost close to the time of death of the victims. 85-year-old Norma French never removed her wedding ring, even after her husband died in 2006, and 92-year-old Doris Gleason always had her gold necklace on. Surprisingly, none of these prized possessions could be found after the women mysteriously died. Some officials say there were about 700 similar deaths like that unattended to. The retirement homes and communities were not raising any alarms, but the families of victims suspected foul play. When the families of victims at Tradition Prestonwood, one of the retirement homes where the suspicious murders were taking place, contacted the Community Relations Director, Edmundo Sanchez, he was not helpful. The families wondered what happened to the missing jewelry, but he only gave short, indifferent answers that did not help or give the families any assurance. Occupants of the retirement homes decided to take matters into their own hands. They put up posters warning everyone to stay alert for the thefts, but the posters were taken down by the management, citing flimsy excuses like the posters had no approval and could cause panic in the community. Families and concerned parties turned to law enforcement officers, who invited Edmundo Sanchez for interrogation. He continued speaking casually and gave more answers that led nowhere. When investigators wanted to know if discussions were happening in-house regarding the incidents, Edmundo implied that they were not by dodging the question. Eventually, owners and management of retirement homes started seeing that all was not well and started talking too. One of them noted that the number of deaths at their retirement home has suddenly gone up in 3.5 months from the normal 3 deaths a year they were accustomed to. To help unveil the mysteries of the death, investigators cast a wider net. They widened their investigation to look into all the deaths in retirement homes from 2016 to 2018 and discovered that the suspicious ones were happening in 4 luxury senior homes, including the Preston Place, Parkview in Frisco, Tradition Prestonwood, and Edgemere Retirement Community. Police officers started by looking into surveillance footage at the retirement homes, but what they found was both strange and surprising. Round-the-clock surveillance cameras were limited in most of the communities, and there were none on the 3rd and 4th floors at Preston Place. Not only did this hinder the investigation, but it gave insights into why the perpetrators were able to carry out so many crimes in all of the retirement homes. Police were not getting many helpful leads, and the few they had led nowhere. They questioned paramedics, but again, nothing came out of it. The breakthrough they needed finally came when Mary Bartell confronted the killer. Next, we look at the incident that revealed the first and main suspect in the murder cases. The Mary Bartell breakthrough. After the Mary Bartell incident, the faces of law enforcement officers lit up. The case was similar to one they've investigated over the years, and with a surviving witness, they could at least get a suspect or other key information that would help close the case. But what really happened? On Monday, March 19, 2018, Mary was having a normal day responding to emails and sending new ones on her computer. Around 8 in the morning, she hears a knock on her door and stands up to see who it is, thinking it could be a friend. As she opens the door, she notices a tall, unknown man immediately push the door against her, trying to force his way in. Mary attempted to prevent entry into her apartment, but the man was too strong for her. He forced his way in, and Mary saw the man's hands. He was wearing 2 green rubber gloves. Mary knew at this point that she was in grave danger and had to do something to save herself. As she attempts to fight the man, he shouts at her and orders her to lie on the bed. The menacing man stands over the delicate 91-year-old. A clear mismatch that meant Mary was unable to fight back or get herself away from his grip. So she attempted to get the life alert on her neck, but the man had her hands pinned down. After fighting for a while without any success, she passes out, unaware of what happened afterward. Moments later, Mary's friend comes inside to find her motionless. It was a frightening scene for her, but she keeps her cool and calls 911. When Mary woke up, she informed officers that 3 rings were missing from her fingers. She described the assailant, and her descriptions matched an unknown man who had been observed loitering around senior retirement homes. People at the facility had seen a man with the same description wandering around the 4th floor, and when questioned, he claimed he was checking for pipe leaks that never existed. On the same day, police received a call reporting a man loitering around his car in the parking lot of the retirement home. The caller gave the license plate numbers to the police, and they quickly checked it. Police officers discovered the car was registered to one Billy Chemirmir, whose appearance matched the ones given by Mary Bartell. The 46-year-old man also appeared to work in the medical line. Upon checking surveillance footage, investigators discovered he had been at the retirement home multiple times in the past, but something did not seem right. It looked like Billy Chemirmir was playing around with different costumes. At first, he appeared like a care worker. Then, they saw other footage of the same person looking like a maintenance worker, a plumber, and so on. Surprised at this man's ability to do it all, they paid more attention to him and found that he had kept all the different uniforms from his previous jobs, and this was how he gained entry into the facilities unhindered. Digging further into his records, police found his past criminal charges. He had been charged with driving under the influence and trespassing at a retirement community in 2016. So far, all the information that has been uncovered about Chemirmir has raised a lot of concerns. This was a man with disturbing records, getting free access to harmful substances and vulnerable people in society. As detectives chase down the suspect, another victim comes into the picture, leading to a pursuit that finally led to an arrest. This is the sad story of Lou Harris and how her murder could have been prevented by law enforcement officers. Lou Harris murder. On March 20, 2018, the day after the attack on Mary Bartell, surveillance footage shows the car from the previous day's report pulled up at a local Walmart, and thankfully they have cameras all around the supermarket. Around 2 in the afternoon, Billy could be seen entering the Walmart and following an elderly woman dressed in red. Billy walks behind the woman as she goes about her business. He continued stalking her, checking all her movements through aisles. The woman was identified as 81-year-old Lou Harris. She had no idea what was going on, finished shopping and headed home, but she had been followed by a dangerous killer on the loose. Some hours later, Billy's vehicle was spotted and police followed behind. Moments later, they observe as the vehicle comes to a stop at an apartment complex. The person inside the vehicle comes out, and they see it's Billy Chemirmir. He brings along a small box from his car and throws it inside a nearby dumpster. Some officers get down to quickly check the item thrown into the dumpster as others continue following him. The box was red and appeared broken. Inside, officers found a document and name tag belonging to Lou Harris. On running the name through appropriate records, they found that she lived nearby and quickly drove to her apartment. On getting there, they found her neighbor who inquired what they wanted and confirmed that he saw Lou Harris the same evening. Police rushed to Lou's apartment only to find the body of an elderly woman matching her description. Sadly, they were too late. Everything seemed in place in Lou Harris's house, and there was no sign of a break-in. The murder could easily have been passed off as a natural death if officers had not followed Chemirmir and discovered the jewelry box. So they put out a red alert for Chemirmir's arrest, and the officers following him quickly made the arrest in front of his North Dallas apartment. How did Chemirmir track down victims? What were his methods, and how was he able to evade police officers for so long? Let's take a look at how this serial killer escaped despite carrying out the most bizarre crimes. Chemirmir murder patterns. Billy Chemirmir, on his arrest, was interrogated, but he pretended to be innocent and denied any wrongdoing. After searching his car and apartment, they found many items linking him to multiple murders, including his cell phones, gloves, a passport, and jewelry belonging to multiple victims. Investigations led detectives to nearby pawn shops and jewelry stores. In one of the shops, they found a man who recognized Chemirmir from the pictures. He explained that Chemirmir presented himself as a jewelry dealer who obtained the pieces legally and had been around to sell the items to them. On his phones, police also found online marketplace accounts through which Chemirmir sold the stolen items, earning over $100,000 in the process. Since 2016, Chemirmir gained access to the various retirement homes using uniforms from his previous jobs. Sometimes he appeared as a nurse. Other times, he was a plumber or maintenance guy. Mary Bartell, who survived the attack, said he forced himself in and smothered her with a pillow until she was unconscious before stealing her valuables. Some days ago, one of Mary's neighbors had died, with police looking more closely into the cases. The victims included Jane Doe, Mamie Del Mia, Minnie Campbell, Miriam Nelson, Martha Williams, Diane Delahunty, and Anne Conklin. All victims were elderly, making the police think they died naturally despite the suspicious number. At Edgemere Retirement Home, he had already killed Catherine Sinclair, Phyllis Payne, and Phoebe Perry before being charged with trespassing and sent away. He moved to Tradition Prestonwood Retirement Home and killed 8, including Glenna Day, Norma French, Juanita Purdy, Leah Corcoran, Solomon Spring, Joyce Abramowitz, Margaret White, and Doris Gleason. Around a year later in Parkview in Frisco, he was accused of killing Marilyn Bixler. Did Chemirmir finally get the punishment for his crimes? What were the complications encountered on the way to bringing this man to justice? Let's look at the complete timeline of events as Chemirmir faced trial and sentencing. Trial and sentencing. After his arrest in March 2018, Billy Chemirmir was charged with the murder of Lou Harris, but 11 additional counts were added to his indictment in May 2019. The same month, he was linked to the murder of 12 elderly women who had been smothered by a pillow. By the end of 2020, more civil lawsuits had been filed against Chemirmir, increasing the number of counts to 18. His trial was initially set for April 5, 2021, but it was later delayed until November of the same year. Dallas County District Attorney John Cruiseau also informed the family of the victims that they would not be seeking the death penalty for Chemirmir. Instead, they will aim to secure 2 life sentences without parole to make sure Chemirmir never gets near any other vulnerable person. When Chemirmir's trial began, the prosecution presented 300 pieces of evidence and brought 30 witnesses. A deposition by Mary Bartell was also shown in court because she had passed on before the trial began. According to prosecutor Jerry Varney, Chemirmir picks out women he knows are too weak to resist. You know now that to him the women who are matriarchs, who are grandmother focal points of family, are just walking dollar signs. As for Chemirmir's legal team, they did not present any witnesses and declined the opportunity to make an opening statement. However, they argued that Chemirmir could not be placed at the murder scene. DNA evidence was not obtained during the investigation, but the FBI said cell phone tower records show that Chemirmir was close to the murder scenes at the time of the death of the victims. The receipts from pawn shops also showed Chemirmir sold many of the items belonging to victims. However, despite the barrage of evidence and witnesses, a mistrial was declared on November 19, 2021, because the Dallas County jury was not able to reach a verdict. The jury was deadlocked at 11-1, citing that one of the jurors refused to deliberate. On April 25, 2022, a retrial began for Billy Chemirmir, and 3 days later, he was found guilty of the murder of Lou Thee Harris. Chemirmir was subsequently sentenced to life in prison. Another trial, this time for the murder of Mary Brooks, began early October 2022, and he was convicted on October 7. The remaining charges were dismissed, leading to disappointment for many of the victims' families. The pillowcase murderer has been sentenced, but it isn't the end of his story. Here is what happened to the man in prison and where he is now. End of the pillowcase murders. On September 19, 2023, 50-year-old Billy Chemirmir was found dead in his prison cell at the Caulfield Unit in Tennessee Colony, Anderson County, Texas. He was killed by his cellmate Wyatt Busby. Wyatt was serving a 50-year jail sentence for stabbing a Houston-based man in 2016. Reports said he beat and stabbed Chemirmir to death after he made insulting remarks about Wyatt's family. Chemirmir's attorney, Philip Hayes, while reacting to his death, said, "Despite how you feel about him, no one deserves to be murdered in prison." Meanwhile, the family members of the victims in Chemirmir's alleged serial killings expressed shock and relief. Doris Gleason, one of the victims' daughter, said her mother died in fear. "This man did not have a peaceful passing. There's some relief in feeling that he didn't get off easily." Billy Chemirmir was a serial killer who brought sadness to many families. He preyed on the weak and vulnerable, putting a stop to their lives before taking off with their valuables. Thanks to the courage of Mary Bartell, Chemirmir was eventually brought to book, but not in time to prevent some of the murders. Hopefully, retirement homes and other places where vulnerable people reside can learn from this to increase their security. Do you think Chemirmir got the punishment he deserved for his crimes? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more cases like this.